Asked and delivered. That's what the Georgia Bulldogs did for me this past Saturday. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on this edition of the How About That Dawgscast, which is powered by Alumni Hall, the ultimate Bulldog shopping experience. Remember, Alumni Hall has the largest and best collection of Georgia Bulldog apparel, accessories, tailgating gear, gifts, everything you need. Save 15% everywhere in the app, online, or in the store with my exclusive code, HBTFD15. Students and members of the military, they get 10% off every day. And when you join the Hall Pass Rewards program, you earn points that never expire. You cannot beat that. Alumni Hall, where Bulldog fans shop. Georgia had some answering to do this past Saturday, at least as far as I was concerned. They had to show up and show me that they were everything that I had hoped that they were. Meaning, I know this was a young team, but I wanted to see them grow. I wanted to see them take the steps necessary to become the kind of team that can compete for championships when we get down to the end of the year. Now, were there still questions, issues, things that have to be improved upon? Absolutely. But I also saw a lot against the Kentucky Wildcats on Saturday that makes me feel better than I did the week before. I saw some improvement. I saw some growth. I saw a step in the right direction. And when we go back and look at the game highlights from this past Saturday, one of the things that stood out to me was I was concerned about an early start. I was concerned about the fact that it was going to be noon after a night game. The fans had given so much the week before. The players had given so much the week before. Would they be able to get up and get ready to go for this noon kickoff? Could they show up and actually start playing at kickoff, or was there going to be some sort of hangover? Because this was the classic trap game. But I was pleasantly surprised. The fans showed up, with the exception of the Greek student section. I don't know what was happening there, but that area was essentially a no-show. For the rest of the stadium, though, the fans showed up, they were involved in the game, and everybody else that was there were doing their part to help the Dogs on Saturday. So that only left the players. Were they going to show up and handle business from the jump? And they did. Opening drive, take the ball. That shows confidence. And then they get right down the field, and Gunner puts it in the end zone. He made his reads. Nothing happened. He couldn't throw the football, but then he took it on himself, put it in the end zone for 6. Then they get pinned back in their own area and do it again. Time after time, they converted on 3rd down. Gunner did it with his legs. He did it with his arm. He got some help from his backs along the way. Clearly, this throw you're looking at to London Humphreys was on time for a 1st down. And then Gunner's just out there snatching ankles, putting another one in the end zone, showing you that a dual threat quarterback is a dangerous player inside the red zone. But there was a whole lot more to it than that. That was a great start, but the Dogs took care of business on the defensive side too. They were shutting down the Kentucky run game. I think they held them to under 50 yards rushing on the day. And Dylan Bell was finding his legs in this game. He finished with 2 rushing touchdowns as well as several big catches. So when I had talked about throw it up down the field, let your guys make a play for you, we saw it. One of the other things I was looking for was the pass rush. Where was it? It showed up on Saturday. C.J. Allen had a sack. Nnamdi Ogboko had a sack. A lot of what I was looking for is what we saw. Shoot, the Dogs even got a turnover, a couple of them on Saturday. C.J. Allen punches the ball out, then gets the recovery. Later in the game, they grab an interception. But like I said, you got players making plays all over the field. Tight ends that we hadn't heard from were making plays. Running backs out of the backfield were making plays. Dylan Bell, whose name I know I had been calling. Where is he? Why aren't we seeing him? We saw him on Saturday. And then, of course, he makes this huge play down the sideline here with a beautiful one-handed catch. Outstanding play. I was so happy for Dylan to see him have some success because of how hard he works. And then the villain for many the week before, Cash Jones, he just does what Cash Jones does. Takes the angle pass, scampers into the end zone, touchdown. We saw a lot of young players play, but it's not just because the Dogs were up. The Georgia Bulldogs are building depth in this game, and it was really good to see. Do we see players starting to make plays like Ellis Robinson, like we see here on the interception? If the ball's in the air and you got a chance to get it, you got to go get it. You capitalize on those moments. The Dogs really did take a step forward on Saturday. Now, like I said, there's a lot left that they have to work through, work out, and improve upon. But the bottom line is they did what they needed to do in a game that they needed to do it in. They handled their business, which sets up where we're headed from here. The Kentucky game told us a lot. It told us that Kirby still has the same kind of fire here in the middle of the year when a lot of people were questioning, is he getting excited enough? Is he making the right calls as a head coach? He showed up on Saturday, and I promise you, it's like I told you before the game. He is still the same Kirby Smart that he's always been. You can like it or not like it, but that is who the man is. And again, we saw it. Gunner did what Gunner does. He used his legs advantageously several times during the game, both on broken plays and on called runs. But he was also throwing the ball around well. He didn't have to throw it a lot, but when he did, he was efficient with it. I think he went 15 of 23, something like that. So Gunner was doing what he would needed to do to keep drives alive, and that's what it's all about. You move the chains, you finish when you get in the red zone. We got a pass rush from the big man in the middle, Nnamdi Ogboko, who is coming. I think that's something that gets lost in everything that happens once the season starts rolling, because believe me, I fully understand. You finish one game and you come up for air and you are already downhill toward the next game. And it feels like you can never get caught up from a fan's perspective. The advantage that the team has, that the players has, is that they have the routine, the process. And that process is what they're going to have to lean on over the next 3 games. But that same process that allows them to grow throughout the year is what is happening right now. The Dogs are 4-1, so not quite halfway through the regular season. And just think back to the things that I was talking about in the summer and then in fall camp as we got to the beginning of the year. These are young players. They are having to grow up in front of us, and it is going to be bumpy and ugly along the way. Guys sometimes take a little bit longer than other guys to show up and actually get something in the box score that says that they're playing well. That's what happened for Ogboko on Saturday. It wasn't like he just dominated someone. The back end was playing decent in pass coverage. They had a little pressure on the edges. Bully tries to step up, and there's Ogboko to make the sack. That's how it's supposed to work. You work together. But then you've got guys just making plays. Again, the back end's doing their job. They're covering up the Kentucky receivers, which is something I talked about going into the game last week. I'm like, we have to cover them up. There's no reason we shouldn't be able to. And when that happens, let's put the quarterback on the ground. Perfect example, C.J. Allen. Everybody's covered. Bully's patting the ball. C.J. goes and gets him. He's hunting at that point. Sack. I could not have asked for anything more. It's like they watched my show last week, the SEC Powers Hour. I sat right here and told Joe, this is what it should look like. And the Dogs went out and did it. They even forced a turnover. They say Kentucky fumbled the ball, Georgia recovered. That's not what happened. Kentucky ran the ball. And C.J. Allen took the tools that he had learned in the week at practice, new techniques that they were trying because they're so desperately trying to force these turnovers, took it onto the field, forced this fumble, and then recovered it himself. That middle 8 for Kentucky, they had already scored, gotten into the game. It was like 21-7 at that point, and they're driving at the end of the first half. They line up, miss a field goal, to end the first half, then come out and on their first possession, you get a fumble. They turn the ball over. Georgia gets it. And what happens? They go right down and score, which is what a good team should do. Kentucky completely got beaten on that middle eight in the football game. And that tells the tale of the whole thing. CJ Allen, a leader, an older voice, showed you with his play, this is how it's supposed to happen for us. We go make it happen on defense, take the ball away, and then the offense goes and puts it in the end zone. And that's where you let players like Dylan Bell do what he does. It snuck up on me. Like, again, on the field, sometimes you lose track. I thought that the first rushing touchdown by Dylan Bell had gotten called back due to a penalty. So the entire rest of the game, I was only counting him as having one rushing touchdown. I didn't put it together in my head until later that night. And then when I started looking at the video I'd shot, that actually he had 2 rushing touchdowns. In the moment, I'm like, Dylan had a good day. Turns out he had a great day, because I know he had a big first down catch over the middle. I know he had the huge catch down the sideline. And then he had the 2 rushing touchdowns. That catch down the sideline, I'm not in the photo. If you're watching here on YouTube, I'm not in this photo just because of the angle. But the dudes in the black shirts there that are wearing Georgia G's, I'm to the left of them, okay? This play happens right in front of me. And you can hear my voice on the video that I shot saying, hit a ball, throw it up and let the guy go get it. Well, Gunner did that. He trusted him to win, put the ball down there where he could go get it, and then Dylan Bell just went up and got it. Just went up and made a fantastic catch. At this point right here, are you thinking he's making that grab? Maybe, maybe not. And then he found a way to corral it, cradle it, pull it in tight, and make a catch that would lead to yet another touchdown for Georgia. Efforts like what you saw against Kentucky speak volumes if you're talking about a young football team. I had talked about it leading into the game. These are the things I want to see. I went down my checklist. I just ran through it with you. They did everything that I wanted them to do. So from where I'm sitting, the game that Georgia had against Kentucky, although not perfect, some might even say not their best game of the year, is a game that I look at and say there was tremendous growth there. And it was huge for Georgia to do what they did against Kentucky on Saturday. Kentucky is who they are, but this was a game that Georgia was supposed to handle. And I don't mean like a directional school, like you go out there and blow them out. This is a game that you have to show up, do what you know how to do, take everything seriously, and handle your opponent. You respect them, but you should go handle your opponent. And that's exactly what Georgia did against Kentucky on Saturday. And I think that bodes very, very well for where they are going. Is their growth process complete? No. Do they have a lot to work on? Absolutely. But you can see that they are moving in the right direction. I want to point out again what a big deal it is that a young team was able to go out on Saturday, play with execution, play with discipline, play with energy from the opening whistle. That was a bigger deal than I think a lot of people are going to give them credit for. And I think the fact that when everything is pointing to that game as the one where you could come out flat and really mess the bed and not take care of business, let Kentucky hang around, that's the game you decide to dial it in and play your best opening half of football that you've played in about a year. That is impressive. And I hope Georgia fans are going to give this team credit for what they did on Saturday with regards to the mental aspect of what it took to come out there and do that. And think about what that tells you. That tells you so much about these players. It tells you a lot about the young players and who they want to be. It tells you a lot about the leadership on that team and the way they handled their teammates throughout the week of practice. And it tells you that that coaching staff has the plan. Remember, Kirby said that. We know how to do it. We have the plan. We know the way forward. And that's what we saw on Saturday against Kentucky. Mark Stoops, after the game, said, I know Georgia doesn't get a lot of credit, especially from their fan base in terms of how they go about their business and what they do, but they put you in a bind. They are very difficult to prepare for, and they come out and play physically, and you have to match them. Georgia was classic Georgia under Kirby Smart against Kentucky. Is that good enough today to say that they're going to win the conference? No, probably not. But does it mean that right now they're headed in the right direction and they have as good a chance as anybody else to get there and maybe do that again? I believe it does. I am looking ahead to these next 3 games, and I'm feeling better about them than I did prior to the game on Saturday. I had hope, I had belief, I needed proof. That's what Saturday was for me against Kentucky. We'll talk about next week's game. We'll talk about those other 3 games here in just a minute. But I just wanted to make sure we gave this moment enough time, because what Georgia did, I understand Kentucky's not ranked. I understand that they're not as talented overall. But that was an SEC opponent that plays Georgia hard, and Georgia went out there and did everything that we could ask of them to do. And I was thrilled to see it. There are things I can't say on YouTube, but I say them on How About Them Dogs Plus. Want to learn more? Just click the link below. Go premium. Be elite. It never stops in the SEC. Because we play Auburn this week, it feels like there's more of this season already behind us than in front of us, because I'm used to playing Auburn down in like late October, early November. But that's not where we are. We're still here in the beginning of October, and we're having to travel over to Jordan-Hare and take on the War Plainsman Tiger Eagles or whatever. Y'all know I love Auburn.
I don't care for Auburn.
The thing about this team is, coming into the year, they thought they were really going to make some noise and do some things because they have talented players on the roster. They thought they had answered their biggest question, which was the quarterback position, when they decided to bring in Jackson Arnold. Hugh Freeze and his Auburn Tigers thought that they had an opportunity to really make some waves. And when they first started the year, they went on the road and got a nice win. But once they got into league play, they're starting to understand that they do have some deficiencies that might just be too big for them to overcome. Even with all of that, Georgia on the road at Auburn at night was a game that a lot of people are pointing to as one that Georgia might drop, one where the Tigers might step up and get them. At the time, prior to the year, when everybody was using Auburn as the buzzword game, I did not agree, and I still don't. Georgia is the better team. Georgia should go on the road and handle their business, but you've got Hugh Freeze, who's going to have Cam Newton in the building that night as they retire his jersey. Jordan-Hare is going to be turned sideways, because they always are at night, especially against Georgia. And this is going to be one of the craziest environments that Georgia will see all year. And I know what you're saying. Well, they've already won at Tennessee. Fact, but it's different at Auburn. I can't tell you why. It just is. I fully expect that there will be some weirdness that happens on Saturday that none of us see coming. Now, if it doesn't go that way, then I really will start to feel good about this Georgia team, because that means they just went in there and put a hammer on somebody. And I don't mean they beat them by 40. I just mean that they went in there and dead-eyed took care of business again. And that's what a better team should do when you are on the road in a situation like that. We're going to see the results of what happened at Tennessee here at Auburn. We talked about how much Georgia grew up and what they proved and what they learned about themselves on the road at Tennessee after that big win. Now they get to put all that in their backpack and go do it again. There's always going to be anxiety about playing on the road inside the conference, because that's a hard thing to do. But if it gets easier, or if you believe that it can get easier, then this is where we're going to see that, right? Because take this young team, they've done all of this once already. So at least now you shouldn't be surprised by what's coming your way, which should allow you to take some of that mental energy and put it on the game. Now that's the Georgia perspective. From the Auburn perspective, you've got Hugh Freeze, who, although he's saying, give me time, it takes time, we're trying to build it, That's great, but the Auburn people don't love that. They're tired of waiting. They haven't been very good for the last few years. And Hugh Freeze still doesn't have what I would consider a signature win. So he's pointing to Georgia at night with a night where they're going to retire Cam Newton's jersey. The fans are going to be nuts. He's pointing to that and saying, this is the stage. This is where we can do it. So make no mistake, Georgia is going to be in deep water on Saturday night. The thing is, we have to remember that they know how to swim when it gets deep. Auburn has players. The thing is, they don't have a team right now, in my estimation, that matches up with what Georgia is. Cam Coleman, future first-round draft pick, written all over him. Barring some crazy turn of events, that is his future. The young man is a playmaker, and he's not the only one that Auburn has. He has other wide receivers that can hurt Georgia. Auburn has other wide receivers that can hurt Georgia, like Singleton. And then, of course, you've got the new trigger man, Jackson Arnold. Now, you might say, well, Jackson can't hit the broadside of a barn with a football when he throws it. Maybe, maybe not. You might say that Auburn can't pass pro, and that's why Arnold looked so bad in the pass game. A lot to that. They did give up 10 sacks to Oklahoma. Now, that's a good defense, but you see what I'm saying. They have their issues in pushing the ball down the field. They have weapons. They can be explosive and dangerous. But for them to do it consistently, that means Georgia is going to have to make errors and mistakes that are going to allow them to do it from where I'm sitting. But Jackson Arnold, though, all you have to do is think back to what he did at Oklahoma last year against Alabama. He did pretty much whatever he wanted to in the run game and enough in the pass game to pull off that upset victory for the Sooners last year. Well, Hugh Freeze is all giddy about what Jackson Arnold can do, and Jackson Arnold's very talented. Georgia wanted him to come here because they believe in his skill. That's not how it went down. He goes to Auburn so he can be the trigger man in this fast-paced Hugh Freeze offense with wide receivers that he felt could make some plays down the field. That brings me back to that offensive line, letting them down in that area so far. But none of this really matters. I'm telling you, Jackson Arnold can hurt Georgia. Hugh Freeze is smart enough to know that Haynes King at Georgia Tech and other mobile quarterbacks have hurt Kirby Smart in this defense over the last few games. He is going to copycat what has worked for those teams as well as what has worked for Auburn against Georgia on Saturday night. And Jackson Arnold is going to be a huge part of that with his legs. Georgia has not been fantastic at rushing the passer this year so far, and they have had serious questions on the back end in pass coverage. Jackson Arnold is exactly the kind of player that can put you in a bind, because if you do get after him with a pass rush, then he can escape and really hurt you. You have to account for him in the run game. If you do get after him in the pass rush and he breaks out of the pocket, now you have a dual issue, right? Is he going to run it for 60, or is he going to break big and throw it over the top because our DBs respond and come up to play the run? They're going to be in a pinch all evening. Or do you sit back and spy him and keep him in the pocket and hope that you can get there with your down four and trust that that back end that has had issues covering receivers earlier this year is now going to be able to cover the several quality wide receivers that Auburn has? Pick your poison. It's going to put Georgia in a bind. There's no two ways around it. But the Dogs should be able to manage. But it's going to take team defense working together and doing their job to both keep him in the pocket and at the same time collapse that pocket in the pass rush so that the defensive backs aren't left out on an island one-on-one against a physical specimen like Cam Coleman, because Cam Coleman can win. And this spins the onus back onto Georgia's defensive staff. We saw them get out-coached against Alabama. We saw them make adjustments against Tennessee. They know what they're doing. The thing is, they have to get it right from the beginning, because Auburn is the kind of place, much like Tennessee, that if you let them jump out early, then you are in for a four-quarter dogfight. It is going to be difficult to come from behind on the road. Now, we know Georgia can do it. They did it at Tennessee. That is what Georgia is trying to avoid when they go to Auburn. How do you do that? Well, Gunner and the offense need to be road warriors, just like they were at Tennessee. That same sort of game. And Joe talked about this on the SEC Powers Hour last week. Being on the road for Gunner might be better. He might actually be more comfortable on the road because it's that us against the world mentality. And the kid loves a good fight. He loves a competition. So going on the road might be just the recipe for a player like Gunner. But he can't be the only one that has that mindset. He and his teammates have to do that together, and they have to execute in a loud environment, much like they did at Tennessee. You can't beat yourself. You can't turn the ball over. That is the mentality of execution and toughness and just a willingness to fight that Gunner is going to have to lead his offense with and the entire team with when they go on the road to Auburn this week. It's a mentality game. We think we're better than you. We know what we have to do. Now we have to dial it in, which is what we saw against Kentucky. And that's what makes me feel so good. Pack that with us on the road and do it on the road against Auburn. That's part of it. The other part of it is they have to remember that a run game travels, and they've got a good one. So make sure that you don't leave it in Athens. Keep Chauncey Bowens rolling. Keep Josh McCray rolling. Nate Frazier, keep them going because you want to beat on that defensive unit for Auburn whenever possible because they've got rush ends that can absolutely make Gunner's night awful in pass rush, right? So you have to be able to run the football to keep them off balance, take the crowd out of the game a little bit, and then dictate when you choose to throw the football. They cannot be playing behind the sticks all night on the road at Auburn. If they do, it's going to be a long night for Georgia. And I don't really see two ways around that. Now, they're still finding their way, but they have to remember to bring the wide receivers with them. Talon Taylor is now out with injury, right? So they're a man down, but they've still got plenty of good bodies that can get out there and make plays for them. Colby Young, Zachariah Branch. Maybe this is the game that Noah Thomas breaks out and announces his presence as a part of this unit. Sokovie White is another player now playing more because of the loss of Taylor that could see the ball come his way against Auburn. Because if you're running the ball effectively, now you can do things with motion and scheme and get guys in good matchups and take advantage of that. That's what the bonus is of having so many quality pass catchers on your roster. I need to see Gunner take that same confidence that he played with against Kentucky, bring it with him and use it with these wide receivers. See it and let it rip. This is not a game to be bashful. If you leave anything in your quiver when you take the field against Auburn on Saturday night, you dramatically increase the opportunity that you're going to walk out of there with a loss. Georgia has to show up and handle their business the way they know they can. Be tough mentally. Run the football. Dictate the level of play on offense. And on defense, be sound in what it is you're doing. If you're going to get after Jackson, then make sure you get home. If you're not going to get after him, if you're going to spy, then make sure that you don't let him escape. Shut down that run game and force Jackson Arnold to beat you with his arm and trust your guys on the back end. That is the blueprint for how you go on the road and beat this Auburn team and deny them a big win on a night that they are looking for a signature win. That Hugh Freeze is looking for a game that he can put his pin in and point to and say, we are on our way. Don't let that be Georgia this Saturday night. If Georgia shows up and does what they're supposed to do, I think they can avoid that. I think that Kirby Smart and this coaching staff will do a good job of reminding all of these players exactly what Auburn is before they show up, and then helping them understand how to process and deal with everything that the day is going to throw at them, because you're going to have that evening kick, that nighttime kick. So you got to pace yourself. You had the noon kick, the donut game against Kentucky. Now we're swinging it back around and we're going to do it under the lights on Saturday. So it's up to Kirby to get his guys ready for an SEC road war, because that is what this is going to be. Auburn will fight until Georgia beats the fight out of them. That's what has to happen on Saturday night. If it does, Georgia's going to improve to 5-1, and then we'll have a conversation about where we think they can go over the rest of the year. Georgia is ready to begin the back half of their season, but first they have to get over the old-time nemesis of the Auburn Tigers. The Deep South's oldest rivalry will be renewed yet again this Saturday night on the road for the Dogs at Jordan-Hare in Auburn, Alabama. One thing is for certain, something's going to happen that none of us are expecting. It always does. Could be something small. Just make sure you're watching for it. Friendly viewership advice there. When it comes to what happens on the field, the Dogs showed me a lot against Kentucky and how they showed up and got ready to play that game against the Wildcats. They came out, started fast, handled their business, and continued it throughout. We saw a lot of good things against Kentucky on Saturday, but none bigger than the mental aspect of the game, in my opinion. The way they showed up and played, the way they were able to do different things, take what Kentucky gave them, and then maximize the effectiveness of those opportunities. The offense did what they do. Dylan Bell showed up and reminded us exactly of who and what he is and why he's a damn good dog. I'm wondering who's going to show up this week. Who's going to be the new face? The guy that we haven't heard from so far. Think about it. On the road at Tennessee, London Humphreys comes to mind. Gunnar Stockton had his coming out party, right? Then last week against Kentucky, here's Dylan Bell. He's back again. Who's it going to be this week? Who's going to show up and show out for us and let us know that we're all right? We're moving in the right direction. I can't wait to see it. If the Dogs trust in Kirby, ready themselves for this SEC road war that's going to happen on the road at Auburn on Saturday night, then they're going to show up, they're going to run the football, they're going to dictate play in the pass game, and on the defensive side of the ball, they are going to stop the run, and they are going to put a bucket or a bag around Jackson Arnold, hold him down, and get out of there with a win. That's going to set us up for what I think is a critical 3-game stretch that's coming. Georgia has everything in front of them right now. They have put themselves in position to still handle the rest of this season and potentially be a championship contender. The first step in that next series of steps for Georgia to prove to everybody that they are who they have always been starts Saturday against the Auburn Tigers. Go Dogs!
Told him, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told him.